Hello friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie Without Remorse in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is Without Remorse. So we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch Without Remorse film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video, where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining, so you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So, let's start the video. Without Remorse is a 2021 American action thriller film directed by Stefano Sollima and written by Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples. It is based on the 1993 novel of the same name by Tom Clancy. The film stars Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Bell, Jodie Turner-Smith, Luke Mitchell, Jack Kesey, Brett Gelman, Lauren London, Coleman Domingo, and Guy Pearce. In the film, John Kelly, a U.S. Navy SEAL seeking revenge after his wife and unit members are killed by Russian hitmen. The film had been in development since the novel was published in 1993, with various actors, including Keanu Reeves and Tom Hardy, approached for the role of John Kelly. After over 20 years in development hell, Jordan was announced as the lead role in September 2018, and Sheridan was hired to rewrite a script originally written in the 1990s. Filming began in Berlin in October 2019 and completed production in October 2020. Without Remorse was originally produced and set for a theatrical release by Paramount Pictures, but was delayed and then acquired by Amazon Studios, who digitally released on Prime Video on April 30th, 2021. The film received mixed reviews from critics, with praise for Jordan's performance, action sequences, and technical aspects, but called the film generic. Plot: in Aleppo, Syria, a team of U.S. Navy SEALs, including Senior Chief Petty Officer John Kelly, rescue a CIA operative taken hostage by a suspected pro-Assad paramilitary group. The situation escalates as the SEALs discover that the captors are actually Russian military. 3 months later, in apparent retaliation for their role in the mission, 2 members of the team are covertly killed by Russian FSB operatives. Kelly's pregnant wife Pam is murdered when the Russians break into their house. Kelly kills 3, all except one of the attackers, before being rushed to the hospital with near-fatal wounds. In Washington, D.C., Lieutenant Commander Karen Greer, Kelly's SEAL team leader and friend, meets with Ritter and Secretary of Defense Thomas Clay to discuss how the FSB discovered the SEALs' identities and review their response options. Leaked news of Russia's unprecedented attack on American soil has caused the already strained relationship between the two nations to sour further, possibly causing a new Cold War. The CIA refuses to conduct an investigation into the murders, motivating Greer to pass confidential information to Kelly. Healed from his injuries, Kelly tracks down the corrupt Russian diplomat who issued the passports to the FSB operatives and forces him to give the name of the surviving assassin before killing him. Incarcerated for murder, Kelly bargains his way out by revealing the escaped operative is Viktor Rykov, an ex-Spetsnaz officer who is hiding in Murmansk, Russia. Despite Greer's objections, Clay allows Kelly to participate in Rykov's capture on the condition that Kelly serves his sentence after the mission. Kelly flies to Murmansk with Greer and a CIA Black Ops team planning to halo jump into Russia. Intercepted and attacked by a Russian fighter, their plane crashes into the Barents Sea. Kelly dives into the wreckage to recover essential equipment, including a Zodiac boat. The team arrives in Murmansk and finds Ritter, whom Kelly suspects is to blame for the intelligence leaks. Ritter swears that he is not responsible and leads the team to Rykov. Kelly goes off mission to confront Rykov, finding him wearing a suicide vest, and learns that he is a deep-cover CIA asset. Rykov detonates his vest, killing himself as the team becomes pinned down by sniper fire. As police arrive, the team realizes that the mission was a setup to have American soldiers killed on Russian soil to start a war. Kelly volunteers to cover the team's escape so that his death could be plausibly denied as he is a convict. Kelly buys the team time to reach safety, but is badly injured. Kelly uses an explosion as cover to steal a Russian military police uniform and hijacks an ambulance to escape. Kelly and the surviving team members leave the country by boat. Ritter officially reports Kelly as dead, allowing Kelly to hunt for the traitor. Back in D.C., Kelly confronts Clay and forces him into his car. After Kelly threatens Clay's family, Clay confesses to being behind the intelligence leaks and orchestrating the conflict between the U.S. and Russia, intending to start a war with Russia to boost the economy and unite the American people against a common enemy. Kelly drives the car over a bridge and lets it sink to the bottom of the Potomac River, drowning Clay. Kelly escapes with a recording of the confession, with the help of Greer, who was waiting in the river with diving gear. At Washington Union Station, Greer gives Kelly a new identity provided by Ritter, where Kelly leaves to begin his new life as John Clark. A year later, Clark meets with Ritter, newly promoted to director, and proposes to create a multinational counterterrorism team, Rainbow. Cast: Michael B. Jordan as John Kelly, Jamie Bell as Robert Ritter, Jodie Turner-Smith as Lt. Commander Karen Greer, Lauren London as Pam Kelly, Brett Gelman as Victor Rykov, Jacob Scipio as Hatchet, Jack Kesey as Thunder Production. Savoy Pictures first bought the film rights to Without Remorse soon after the novel was released, for $2.5 million. At one point, Keanu Reeves was offered the role as John Kelly for $7 million, but declined. Although the film failed to meet its expected December 1995 release date, it was fast-tracked after John Milius joined the production with the intent to write and direct the film, working in close consultation with the original book's author, Tom Clancy. Variety magazine reported that Lawrence Fishburne and Gary Sinise were later attached to star in the adaptation. However, production was shut down for script problems and financial woes with the production company. The film went under development hell for years until Christopher McQuarrie signed on with Paramount Pictures to direct the adaptation in 2012. Tom Hardy was approached by Paramount to play Kelly, and Kevin Costner was slated to reprise his role as mentor William Harper from another Clancy-based film, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, 2014, but this version did not happen. In 2017, it was announced that Akiva Goldsman signed on with the same studio to produce another film adaptation starring Clark, Rainbow Six. On September 20, 2018, Michael B. Jordan was announced to be playing the character in a two-part film series, which will be composed of Without Remorse and Rainbow Six and produced by Goldsman, Jordan, Josh Appelbaum, and Andre Nemec. In December 2018, Stefano Sollima was hired to direct the film. On January 9, 2019, Variety announced that Taylor Sheridan would rewrite the screenplay. In September 2019, Jamie Bell and Jodie Turner-Smith were cast, with Luke Mitchell, Jacob Scipio, Cam Gigandet, Jack Kesey, Todd Lassence, and Brett Gelman joining in October. Filming began in Berlin on October 25, 2019. Some filming was scheduled to begin on December 19 near DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. The film Possibly Vague completed filming in Los Angeles on October 19, 2020. Johnsey composed the film score. Paramount Music has released the soundtrack, coinciding with the film's release. Without Remorse was originally scheduled to be released on September 18, 2020 by Paramount Pictures, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was delayed to October 2, 2020, and again to February 26, 2021. In July 2020, Amazon Studios entered talks to acquire the distribution rights to the film and release it digitally on Amazon Prime Video. Paramount officially took the film off its theatrical release calendar in November 2020. The film was teased in Amazon's commercial featuring Alexa and Jordan made for Super Bowl Elva. The film was released on Prime Video on April 30, 2021. According to Samba TV, The film was watched in 4.8 million households in its first 30 days of release. Reception. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a 45% approval rating based on 191 reviews, with an average score of 5.3/10. The website's critics' consensus reads, "Despite a commanding performance from Michael B. Jordan, Without Remorse fails to escape its outdated patriotic tropes and forced franchise place settings." Metacritic assigned the film a weighted average score of 41 out of 100, based on 41 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. The Hollywood Reporter's David Rooney called the film pacey and punchy, buoyed by its magnetic lead, and wrote, "The result is a solid entry in the Clancy screen canon. Gritty, briskly paced, laced with vigorously choreographed fight scenes, explosive weapons action, and twisty political intrigue that seems prescient as it taps into the most strained period in U.S.-Russian relations since the Cold War." Randy Myers of the Mercury News wrote, "Without Remorse improves on its source material and delivers a satisfyingly sleek and ultra-violent spy thriller." Owen Gleiberman of Variety called the film a lively formulaic action hero origin story dunked in combat grunge that demonstrates how a resourceful lead actor can bend and heighten the meaning of a commercial thriller. Barry Hertz of the Globe and Mail wrote, "Without Remorse is a half-hearted attempt to exfiltrate an espionage brand that just won't come in from the cold. If you like your shootouts generic, your characters disposable, and your plot twists as predictable as airport newsstand merchandise, then have I got the far from impossible mission for you." David Ehrlich of IndieWire gave the film a grade of C and said, "Without Remorse doesn't understand the role it's meant to serve as the foundation of a potential franchise. It's a movie locked in a tedious custody battle between legacy and potential, too safe to whet appetites for what's to come, while also too sequel-oriented to stand on its own two legs." Anupama Chopra of Film Companion wrote, "The action is fierce and relentless, the body count is high, but it isn't seductive." Sequel. In September 2018, Jordan's selection to play Kelly was reported to serve as an origin story for the character before he would appear in a sequel based on Clancy's Rainbow Six novel. In January 2023, the film adaptation was officially greenlit and entered development. Chad Stahelski will serve as director, with Jordan reprising his role from the previous movie, with the plot centering around Jordan's character commanding a multi-country anti-terrorist squad against an international conspiracy. Additionally, Jordan is a producer, alongside Akiva Goldsman, Greg Lessons, Josh Appelbaum, Andre Nemec, and Elizabeth Raposo. The project will be distributed by Paramount, with the studio developing Rainbow Six for theatrical release. The film will also be a joint venture production between Paramount, Outlier Society, Weed Road Pictures, the Sawmill Productions, and 8711 Entertainment. Principal photography is expected to commence as Stahelski's next project, following the release of John Wick Chapter 4, 2023. The plot of Amazon's Tom Clancy's Without Remorse is so indecipherable that I could just type that symbol Prince once used and it would serve as a valid synopsis. The gist of the film is easy. Angry Navy SEAL seeks revenge after his very pregnant wife is brutally riddled with bullet holes on screen. The confusion comes in answering the questions of why she was killed, who did it, and what this has to do with the US government. This is one of those super convoluted conspiracy theory movies where nothing makes sense and you simply stop caring. Saviors show up inexplicably at just the right time. People come off as evil for the sole purpose of misleading us. There's no character development, a lot of patriotic posturing, and the villain gives a lecture that must have been written before they cast a black actor as its recipient. Despite endless gunfire and a lot of shit blowing up, most of the action sequences fail to quicken the pulse. Don't look to the name in the title for help. This film only lifts his character's family tragedy and the title. The screenplay by Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples fashions a completely different story out of whole cloth. According to Wikipedia, this is a spin-off of the popular Jack Ryan series, and some of the choices for protagonist John Clark included Keanu Reeves, Gary Sinise, and Tom Hardy. Here, Clark is rechristened Jack Kelly, and is played by Michael B. Jordan, a fine actor who can adeptly play drama and action with equal intensity. He gets a lot of the latter, which may explain why he wanted to play this part. However, Kelly is a one-dimensional killing machine who is given few opportunities to flesh out his rage and interrogate his fate. At one point, Jordan breaks into his house after his wife Pam's, Lauren London, murder, sinks to the floor and howls in agony. It's a raw moment that makes one lament that we don't get to know her at all. No amount of acting by Jordan can make Pam anything but the overused plot device of the doomed woman whose death or violation lights a fire under the man she loved. She gets less than 5 minutes of screen time before she's crudely dispatched. London is so appealing that the cynical way she is used is borderline offensive. A near-death fantasy sequence she appears in reduces her to a cliché trapped in an egregious fake-out that robs the film of any emotional power. Without Remorse opens with Navy SEALs led by Kelly's superior officer, Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith, attempting a rescue mission that goes in a direction Kelly was not briefed about beforehand. Kelly glares at sinister big shot Robert Ritter, Jamie Bell, and not for the last time. Soon after, several of Kelly's team are murdered in gang-style executions or intentional hit-and-runs. Making it personal, the bad guys take out Kelly's family as well. Kelly shoots 3 of the 4 assassins, but passes out from his own bullet wounds before he can finish off the 4th. He awakens to Greer informing him that CIA Secretary Clay, Guy Pearce, has no intention of pursuing justice for Pam. She was collateral damage, retaliation for the earlier SEALs mission that resulted in the deaths of several Russian agents. Or something like that. Of course, Clay's decision infuriates Kelly, sending him on his mission of vengeance and arming him with several questions and severe paranoia. Is the constantly sneering Ritter part of this cover-up conspiracy? And where did that 4th assassin disappear to without a trace? Based on a tip from Greer, Kelly tracks a lead to Dulles Airport. The ensuing violence is so over-the-top ridiculous. Gasoline fires, T-boned vehicles, torture by bullet. That you're astonished. Kelly doesn't blow the hell up along with his quarry. Instead, he's sent to prison where he's surrounded by vindictive Russians and compelled to show us an upper body that would shame Adonis. Michael B. Jordan preparing to fight a slew of baddies while posing shirtless is the only joy you'll receive from Without Remorse. Making Kelly report to a tough female superior is an intriguing concept for such an otherwise by-the-numbers actioner. The film doesn't make a big deal out of that, but it does make very clunky commentary about having 2 black leads in a military movie. "We fought for a country that didn't love us back" is one line of dialogue that plays like a pander to white audience members who need convincing that patriotism can exist in a black package. This truth deserves more than lip service dialogue. Even worse, when the villain tells Kelly that Americans are turning against one another solely because they don't have a foreign enemy to hate, it's a downright idiotic excuse to sell to a person of color. Racism and partisan hatred exist because Americans are bored? Something like that. After all this incoherent nonsense climaxes with faked deaths and justice meted out in the name of a woman we barely met, let alone got to know, Without Remorse has the nerve to end with an equally incoherent Nick Fury-style mid-credits sequence that sets up a sequel I can't imagine viewers giving a damn about wanting to see. I was so happy the film was over that I almost turned the screener off before this scene appeared, so consider this your warning that it's there. Besides a well-done underwater sequence shot by Philippe Rousselot, there's very little to recommend this film. But if you really need to see Michael B. Jordan battling Russians, just watch Creed 2. Plot. Seeking justice for the murder of his pregnant wife, an elite Navy SEAL uncovers a covert plot that threatens to engulf the United States and Russia in an all-out war. Review. I've never read any of Tom Clancy's novels before, so forgive me for not being totally up to speed with characters and lore. I am, however, familiar with the Jack Ryan television series on Amazon Prime and the previous movies. In Without Remorse, Michael B. Jordan stars as John Kelly, a Navy SEAL who goes on a path to avenge his wife's murder, only to find himself inside of a larger conspiracy. John Kelly, or Clark as he will come to be known, has appeared before with Willem Dafoe portraying him in Clear and Present Danger and Liev Schreiber playing him in The Sum of All Fears. It's unclear at this point if this movie takes place in the same universe as the Amazon Prime Jack Ryan series, but I have a feeling it might connect down the line. Without Remorse isn't as cerebral as some Tom Clancy tales of the past, going more for wall-to-wall action, which we're quite happy about on this site. It is mostly a straightforward revenge tale, but there are a few twists throughout, even if it's pretty obvious early on who the main villain is. Michael B. Jordan is immediately relatable as Kelly, who is at his core a loyal and good man. He looks believable in the action scenes and even has some hand-to-hand combat. Jordan has a brooding intensity that works when he needs to be tough, but can also come across as a family man, so when that is taken from him, we are on his side all the way. The action is well shot, giving us plenty of gritty kills and a high body count. It never quite matches the ambush scene from Clear and Present Danger, but it's still impressive. It's hard to pick a highlight, but the climactic gunfight with a sniper is stunning, as is the scene from the trailers where Kelly interrogates someone in a burning car. I barely noticed the score, which was in the background, but the music at the end credits was quite awesome. The acting is first-rate all around, with Jamie Bell making for a more interesting character than we first think. But it's Kelly's ally, Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith, who I really took to, as she was sympathetic to Kelly's situation, but also not sure if he is the right man for the job. I could watch Guy Pearce read the phone book, and it would be engaging. He is one of my favorite actors working today, and he's as magnetic as always. Some of the supporting cast aren't given much in terms of characterization, but perhaps if this ended up getting a series or more movies, we might get to know them a bit better. In the last few years, screenwriter Taylor Sheridan brought something steely and smart to the action genre with the drug cartel thriller Sicario and its politically provocative sequel, Sicario 2, a Trumpian nightmare of border incursion, directed by Stefano Sollima. Sheridan and Sollima are reunited for this movie, but it is a by-the-numbers macho adventure, not unlike something from the era of VHS rental, Rambo, and tough guy military mavericks being sold down the river by the pointy-headed creeps in suits back in Washington, D.C., or Langley, home of the CIA. This film is based on Tom Clancy's 1993 bestseller, originally set during the Vietnam War, but now updated to the situation in Syria. Michael B. Jordan is Navy SEAL John Clark, whose pregnant wife is murdered on U.S. soil, apparently by FSB agents, in revenge for John taking out Russian special forces in Aleppo as part of a hostage rescue. So, Without Remorse becomes essentially an unidirectional revenge story, as John is permitted back into the field on a deniable Black Ops payback mission. His friend and ally Karen, Jodie Turner-Smith from Queen and Slim, has John's back, and Secretary of Defense Clay, Guy Pearce, rather approves of his heroically unconventional methods, though slippery CIA Chief Ritter, Jamie Bell, seems to be running some kind of side hustle, which involves appeasing the Russians. This is a film that certainly gives you bangs for your buck and establishment stabs in the back, a sine qua non for this kind of story. And with an awful inevitability, John Clark's ultimate bad guy emerges from the shadows with some outrageous geopolitical monologuing in the approved supervillain style, prior to a post-credit sting setting up a possible superhero-type franchise along the lines author Tom Clancy envisioned. This truth deserves more than lip-service dialogue. Even worse, when the villain tells Kelly that Americans are turning against one another solely because they don't have a foreign enemy to hate, it's a downright idiotic excuse to sell to a person of color. Racism and partisan hatred exist because Americans are bored. Something like that. After all this incoherent nonsense climaxes with fake deaths and justice, meted out in the name of a woman we barely met, let alone got to know without remorse, has the nerve to, and with an equally incoherent Nick Fury-style mid-credit sequence that sets up a sequel, I can't imagine viewers giving a damn about wanting to see. I was so happy the film was over that I almost turned the screener off before this scene appeared. So consider this your warning that it's there. Besides a well-done underwater sequence shot by a Philip Rousselot, There's very little to recommend this film in the last few years. Screenwriter Taylor Sheridan brought something steely and smart to the action genre with the drug cartel thriller Sicario and a politically provocative sequel, Sicario 2: A Nightmare of Border Incursion, directed by Stefano. Sollima Sheridan and Sollima are reunited for this movie, but it is by the numbers Mako adventure, not unlike something from the era of VHS rental and tough guy military mavericks being sold down the river by the pointy-headed creeps in suits back in Washington, D.C., Core Langley, home of the CIA. This film is based on Tom Clancy's 1993 bestseller, originally set during the Vietnam War, but now updated to the situation in Syria. A Michael B. Jordan is Navy SEAL John Clark, whose pregnant wife is murdered on U.S. soil apparently by FSB agents in revenge for John taking out Russian special forces in Alpo as part of a hostage rescue. So without Remorse becomes essentially an unidirectional revenge story, as John is permitted back into the field on a deniable Black Ops payback mission. His friend and ally, Karen Jodie Turner-Smith, from Queen Slim, has John's back, and Secretary of Defense Clay Guy Pearce rather approves of his heroically unconventional methods, a slippery sigh. Fritter Jamie Bell seems to be running some kind of side hustle, which involves appeasing the Russians. So whose side is this guy on? This is a film that certainly gives you bangs for your buck and establishment stabs in the back. Pay assigned Quanon for this kind of story. And with an awful inevitability, John Clark's ultimate bad guy emerges from the shadows with some outrageous geopolitical monologuing in the approved supervillain style, lay prior to a post-Reddit sting, setting up a possible superhero-type franchise along the lines author at Tom Clancy envisioned. But there's not much real spark to it. Tom Clancy's Without Remorse is released on the 30th of April on Amazon Prime Video. Tom Clancy's Without Remorse tries to kickstart the Tom Clancy equivalent of the MCU with a ferocious and captivating lead performance from Michael B. Jordan. It almost feels like solid roots to establish a TV series, but a little lacking in terms of feeling like a complete movie. The setup is really terrific, and it's all quite fast-paced for this type of genre. The story is easily digestibly with Clancy's conspiracy-heavy prose. I was worried we'd be bogged down in convoluted mumbo-jumbo. Thankfully, the script from Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples is straightforward and to the point. Long after his involvement in a top-secret operation in Syria, John Kelly, Michael B. Jordan, on the cusp of retiring from the military, becomes the target of a mysterious entity. They begin killing off all of those involved in the operation, and John's wife and unborn child fall victim. Now John will stop at nothing to avenge their deaths, desperate to uncover the vast lengths of a conspiracy with little care for its collateral damage. The narrative is quick and exciting, rarely showing cracks. The acting is great across the board. Michael B. Jordan has proved time and time again that he's an incredible action lead. His work here may not be as physical as in Reed, but it allows him to flex a different type of action muscle than I'm used to seeing. The violence is visceral, with great editing that uses the R rating to full advantage. Though I did find the story to be a little too basic and lacking in depth. The action is strong enough to recommend this for any fan of the genre. Anna Avengers like tease after the credits promises we'll be seeing more from this world very soon. A broken bar. I would not be at all surprised if Amazon announced sequels or even a TV series pickup. If this one is successful, I would definitely be down for whatever project could sprout from this one, especially if they keep Michael B. Jordan in the lead role. While the differences are not deliberate, it's instructive to compare the new Autumn Clancy thriller. Without Remorse to the first one that featured Clancy's mega badass Navy SEAL and covert operative John Clark, 1994 is a clear and present danger. That film primarily focuses on Clancy's other hero, Jack Ryan, played by Harrison Ford with Clark William Dafoe in the secondary role. While he provides some of the requisite action demanded of a big military thriller, that picture's primary focus is political intrigue, conspiracies within the United States government, and Ryan's dogged pursuit of truth. You even see him do something the hero of a modern movie would almost never do. Read some books in order to hunt down a key piece of information. John Clark, or as he's referred to for most of Without Remorse. John Kelly, is not one for reading. He's much too busy and much too angry. And so Without Remorse, granted, it's adapting a different Clancy novel. And this time Clark Kelly is the central figure where Ryan, by the time of For Clear and Present Danger, is less of a field agent than a bureaucrat that winds up getting shot at a lot. The Kelly of Without Remorse, played by a Michael B. Jordan, is basically the ultimate soldier on a single-minded quest for costs. What illusions are made to the politics around Kelly's unit get pushed to the background so they don't get in the way of one explosive sequence after another. Thus began with the very first shot of the film, where Jordan's Kelly and his team of SEALs to rescue a hostage from the Russian military in Syria. The mission is a success, but not long after Kelly returns to his impossibly chic home in the United States, the rest of his team is gunned down. Kelly gets targeted too, but manages to survive because, well, he's John Kelly. Tragically, his pregnant wife, Lauren London, gets caught in the crossfire that leads him and another team of elite warriors back overseas on the trail of one of the assassins both survived at the botched hit on Kelly and his family, to get his chance at revenge. Kelly willfully allows the Secretary of Defense, Guy Pearce, and a cunning CIA operative, Jamie Bell, to use him as a pawn in their larger schemes. Those are Kelly's own words. One of the few humanizing details offered by Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples' Braz script is Kelly's love of chess. Otherwise, the character is little more than a collection of action movie cliches. The only things that define him are his loyalty to his men and his determination to kill those responsible for his family's deaths. The only emotions he feels are rage and resolve. Johnson, one of our best young actors, is certainly capable of embodying this sort of angry, powerful character. He's also capable of a lot more than that, as his performances in films like Yakita and the Black Panther, and on TV shows like The Weary and The Blat. Friday Night Lights showed the movie around Jordan. I saw just like Kelly himself, cold, detached, and brutal. Director Stefano Sollima previously worked with Sheridan on The Equa Day of the Soul. Due to that film seemed to iron out all of the original's quirks and ambiguity in exchange for an efficient but superficial cop movie. Without Remorse gives a similar sheen of bland professionalism to Tom Clancy's universe. What little remains of the moral swamp jack waded through in films like A Clear and Present Danger only exists now to be dispatched by John Kelly with as little fuss as possible. The film is straightforward to fault. A Coming to America would have been a more fine movie in a crowded theater. Randa Saula would have looked beautiful on a big screen. Without Remorse, on the other hand, benefits from a home release. It's nominally a big summer action movie, but its workmanlike plotting and lean dialogue push at a closer in tone and scale to something like a Death Wish if it was set in the world of the military. It lends itself well to TV viewing, where there's no pressure of a movie being worth the price of a ticket and less expectation that an adventure movie take on larger-than-life qualities. Still, even in more generous viewing conditions at home, Without Remorse is at best a relatively painless way to pass 2 hours in the company of an overqualified Michael B. Jordan. The film doesn't measure up to the better Clancy adaptations of the 1990s, like A Clear and Present Danger or The Hunt for Red October. Situating the bulk of its action in 2019, a Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, he updates Clancy's 1993 novel by opening with a prologue in Aleppo, Syria, and making reference to the Russian military presence in the country. But the geopolitics and relative lack of anything otherwise date the movie to a barely post-Cold War period. While the plot mechanics grind along like holdovers from Charles Bronson's heyday, Michael B. Jordan plays John Kelly, a Navy SEAL whose pregnant wife, Lauren London, is killed when Russian operatives invade their home, intending to terminate him. A sympathetic colleague from the SEALs, Jodie Turner-Smith, and the Defense Secretary, Guy Pearce, relaxed protocol to help Kelly get revenge, but the CIA official, Jamie Bell, gets peeved, signaling to viewers that he's secretly working for the other side. Or at least that the screenwriters Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples need them to think that either way, Bell could dial down the superciliousness. The director, Stefano Sicario. Day of. The Soul Do manages the proceedings with a minimum of zest, relying on a score by Johnny of Cigar Row for ambient energy. Even the visuals are gray and indifferent, and the briefer-than-expected running time does not correspond to a brisk pace. 3 set pieces. An ambush outside Dallas Airport. A creatively executed hostage-taking at a prison. A plane crash. Elevate the movie's pulse, but most of Without Remorse is surprisingly dull. More concerned with laying franchise groundwork than with being exciting on its own terms. Jordan makes a sturdy enough action hero, but the character is portrayed doesn't give him any contours to play. I am not sure that any modern author's works have been adapted as much as Tom Clancy's. From movies to TV shows to video games, the late author's name is everywhere as his works of political intrigue get adapted and then readapted. His works are deeply political, so it is always interesting to see how it has been reinterpreted for a different time. Today I look at the latest film adaptation of his work, with the Without Remorse. So to set the scene, we open in Aleppo, Syria, as John Kelly, Michael B. Jordan, and his team are sneak into a stronghold to rescue a CIA operative captured by government forces by CIA operative Robert Jamie Bell. However, when they arrive, it is not Syrian government forces holding the officer, but Russian forces as they try to exfil from the building. An RPG splits the team, but they manage to escape. 3 months later, John is in Washington, D.C., with his very pregnant wife, Pam Lauren London, preparing to leave the Navy. Still, unknown to him, his old team is getting assassinated one at a time across America. For a film that is all about its action scenes. I like the small touches the filmmakers added before the action started. For example, when John Kelly is in a prison cell and knows he will get ganked, knowing he is entirely outpositioned, he does everything possible to turn things in his favor, removing his shirt and covering himself with water to limit handholds, flooding the floor to restrict mobility. It was a good way of showing John's situational awareness, even if it was just an excuse to have Michael B. Jordan get his shirt off. These also expand into the more extensive set-piece action moments, like the moment after the plane crash, where they have the semi-submerged set rotating, simulating the plane, shifting as it is filled with water. The other strength of this film is the casting, with the leading trio working together to sell every moment. I am not sure that anyone has better physicality for a role like this than Michael B. Jordan. You feel his earnestness, his rage, and at no point do you question the almost ridiculous feats he pulls off as John Kelly. Jamie Bell is always a delight, and here he sells the possibly duplicitous CIA agent Twitter perfectly. This juxtaposes Jodie Turner-Smith, who completely nails the hard-nosed yet secretly caring Karen Greer. Unfortunately, a large supporting cast gets relegated to scene filler and the dually underused Guy Pearce, but that core trio still makes it work. Unfortunately, the legacy that the film is working within is where it doesn't work. From the start of the film to its ending, not a moment went by that you couldn't chart the course from the start. You knew betrayal was coming and coming again, because these power structures always appear in these works. Indeed, much of this narrative, starting with the wife's death as motivation for the protagonist, feels outdated. Even when the film tries to update its story to a more modern setting, you can still feel those gears of history winding in the background. In the end, do we recommend a Tom Clancy's Without Remorse? Well, look, it is not the most imaginative film I have ever watched, and in many ways, it feels like almost a relic of a different time. But there was a lot of work put into this film, and the cast is clearly here for it. So I don't think you'll waste your time if you know this type of film is your jam. If you like it at Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, I would also recommend to you A Mission Impossible, A Rogue Nation. Tom Clancy's Without Remorse is a lively, formulaic action hero origin story, dunked in combat grunge that demonstrates how a resourceful lead actor can bend and heighten the meaning of a commercial thriller. In the opening sequence, which looks like an outtake from Zero Dark Dirty Shot in The Rebel of Full Metal Jacket, John Kelly, Michael B. Jordan, the leader of a team of U.S. Navy SEALs, heads up a mission in Aleppo to rescue a CIA operative who's been taken hostage. The enemy combatants turn out to be Russian ex-military forces, which is not only a surprise, but something the team's CIA overseer, the Weasley Robert Ritter Jamie Bell, is trying to keep from them. Back in the States, several of the SEALs who were part of the mission are killed execution-style by Russian nationals. The assassins go after Kelly too, gunning down his pregnant wife, Pam Lauren London. Though Kelly himself escapes, which means that he's now a ticking time bomb with his dial set to bloody revenge. The specter of Russian aggression haunts Without Remorse, which is based on a 1993 Tom Clancy novel that was spun off from the Jackin series. Clancy, who died in 2013, became a celebrity pulp novelist by fusing cold war righteousness with insider munitions fetishism. His books had a lowdown on the latest military hardware, and that seduced readers into thinking that his hawkish espionage morality plays were authentic as well. The showdown between the US and Russia was his fulcrum and Without Remorse, which Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples' script reconfigures to the present day, offers a kind of new world order version of it. The plot is sometimes murky, but more than that, the Cold War tension is now a nostalgic shadow of its former self. Compared to a good-born film, Without Remorse feels generic compared to the best of the Jack Ryan films like Patriotic Games. It will look right at home on the streaming venue of Amazon. Yet Jordan, as a man programmed for payback, brings his own scowling renegade spin to it. Once Kelly loses his family, he's held because has a hell with no one but his tough love friend and Officer Lieutenant Commander Karen Greer. Jodie Turner-Smith to turn to, he's the Walking Dead with attitude. He feels as betrayed by his overseers as Rambo did. But Jordan is too intense an actor to play Kelly as a standard angry, cool, vengeful dynamo. He makes him disturbed, bothered, and torn up inside, which lends his scenes, and under these movies usually don't have as directed by Stefano Sollima. Day of the Soul, Do Without Remorse, features a handful of tasty action set pieces like one in which Kelly tails a corrupt Russian diplomat maids to Dallas International Airport, pours gasoline on his car and sets it aflame also, that he can death wish the name of his wife's killer out of him confined to a prison cell. After those vigilante fireworks, Kelly fights off an army of guards by wrapping his fist in a towel and flooding the floor. A strategy the pumped-up Jordan makes quite convincing. He's on a mission of no mercy, and after meeting with the U.S. Secretary of Defense, played by a two-dividend to trusty Guy Pearce, and offering up the name of his wife's killer, Victor Ryoff Brett Galman, as a bargaining chip, Kelly is made part of an elite task force to travel into the belly of the beast. On this flight to Murmansk, Russia, they're shot out of the sky by a Russian tracking plane, an extended sequence that Sollima stages as a vast underwater canvas of fear. Once Kelly and his crew arrive in Mormons, though, Without Remorse becomes a rather prosaic action movie, and that's because it's only pretending to be a down-and-dirty revenge flick. An ominous, upstate vibe hangs over the action. But in this case, the deep state is really a shallow state amorphosity that never becomes especially menacing. Instead, the film follows a twisty logic of torturous paranoia, presenting attacks that have been designed to trigger counterattacks, all with diabolical tensions between the US and Russia may be at a fuller boil now than they have been for a while. But Without Remorse is still a sign of how much the Clancy worldview has faded and how much franchise thriller filmmaking has changed since the 90s when Jack Ryan ruled. On the one hand, Jordan plays Kelly with a supple alienation that taps into the desperation of the moment. Yet the film is held together by the three-day-old chewing gum of a conspiracy that's just rickety enough to seem like a relic. Does get his chance at payback, though he has to turn himself into a ghost to do it. He'll be back. A closing teaser promises a series about the superhero-style team of agents. But now that the ghost of Tom Clancy has launched this franchise, the producers going forward would be wise to leave the author's square-jaw armchair, realpolitik, out of the picture. I've never read any of Tom Clancy's novels before, so forgive me for not being totally up to speed with characters and lore. I am, however, familiar with the Jack Ryan television series on Amazon Prime and the previous movies. In Without Remorse, Michael B. Jordan stars as John Kelly, a Navy SEAL who goes on a path to avenge his wife's murder only to find himself inside of a larger conspiracy. John Kelly, or Clark, as he will come to be known, has appeared before with William Dafoe, portraying him in Clear and Present Danger, and Liev Schreiber playing him in The Sum of All Fears. It's unclear at this point if this movie takes place in the same universe as the Amazon Prime Jack Ryan series, but I have a feeling it might connect down the line. Without Remorse isn't as cerebral as some Tom Clancy tales of the past, going more for wall-to-wall action, which we're quite happy about on this site. It is mostly a straightforward revenge tale, but there are a few twists. It's pretty obvious early on who the main villain, Isa Broken Bar. Michael B. Jordan is immediately relatable as Kelly, who is at his core a loyal and good man. He looks believable in the action scenes and even has some hand-to-hand combat. Jordan has a brooding intensity that works when he needs to be tough, but can also come across as a family man. So, when that is taken from him, we are on his side all the way. The action is well shot, giving us plenty of gritty kills, and a high-bodied never quite matches the ambush scene from Clear and Present Danger, but it's still impressive. It's hard to pick a highlight, but the climactic gunfight with the sniper is stunning, as is the scene from the trailers where Kelly interrogates someone in a burning car. I barely noticed the score, which was in the background, but the music at the on-credits was quite wholesome. The acting is first-rate all around, with Jamie Bell making for a more interesting character than we first think. But it's Kelly's, a la Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith, who I really took to, as she was sympathetic to Kelly's situation, but also not sure if he is the right man for the job. I could watch Guy Pearce read the phone book, and it would be engaging. He is one of my favorite actors working today, and he's as magnetic as always. Some of the supporting cast aren't given much in terms of characterization, but perhaps if this ended up getting a series or more movies, we might get to know them a bit better. Overall, Without Remorse is a solid first entry into the world of Tom Clancy for Michael B. Jordan, and I would like to see him return for further adventures in the future, which seems likely. The pacing rarely lets up, giving us an action-packed, if slightly predictable, thrill ride. Let's get one thing straight. Olivia for the Jack Ryan verse films Do the Hunt for Red October is on every playable medium in my house. Blu-ray, 4K, DVR, streaming, and the sell-through widescreen VHS is in a cabinet upstairs somewhere, and channel surfing stops when I find a patriotic game as, or Clear and Present Danger. I even check out Up the Sum of All Fears A, which I didn't like much when I saw it in theaters, when it's on cable. So when I heard Michael B. Jordan was going to re-establish the John Clark character Ana Without Remorse, an adaptation of Clark's origin story, I rejoiced. Here's a guy who has the physicality and the acting chops to play a younger version of the hard-bitten character featured in many Tom Clancy novels and played a Clear and Present Danger by Willem Dafoe. But I didn't expect him to be the best thing about the movie. A Jordan, Jodie Turner-Smith, and the presences of veteran actors Jamie Bell and Guy Pearce are the only factors saving this film from obscurity and utter failure. It's not their fault. The script by Taylor Sheridan and Will Staples and uneven direction by Stefano Sollima out of the film too often to be truly at one with it. A lack of nuance combined with hasty, badly executed attempts at humanization or dangling red herrings over the drama instead of maybe playing it a little less forward and obvious, leaving us with only the performances to admire. The whole thing starts by making sure fans are uncomfortable with Bob Ritter, Jamie Bell, being in the command seat for the film's opening extraction. Mission, which finds John Kelly before he received the Clark surname, fighting his way out of a Syrian stronghold. Ritter's just duped the SEAL team into a search and destroy mission, and the opposing force is not at all who the mission report said they were going to be, instead of low-level scumbags. The ex-Russian military and the hostage they've rescued, a broken bar. Well, we don't find out too much about him, which seems to be a leitmotif for anyone who's not John. Soon after, two members of the SEAL team turn up. that a third attempt leaves John's pregnant wife, Pam, Lauren London, dead, and John riddled with bullets as a result of the mission. Eventually, we learned that the people responsible are a part of the same Russian squad they all but exterminated in the film's title sequence. It also appears that a dead Russian whom the CIA supposedly killed is the man who pulled the trigger on Pam. Thus begins John's revenge mission. And like Lieutenant Commander Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith says when describing Jay's current mental state, "It's messy. There's nothing here you haven't seen in countless other espionage or government versus chestnuts at a dead pregnant wife, being imprisoned with the very people you're trying to avoid, the betrayal you see coming from miles away, the hero making the villain say a deceased victim's name before they die, and various shouts of 'give me a name and get the gear.' They are trotted out and given brief life, before being shoved back in the closet where they should have stayed." The film steals linchpin sequences from 2000, toss of the boring identity, and even the bathroom scene from a Green Street hooliganza. You'll know it when you see it. Most damningly, the film conglomerates plot lifts from the aforementioned at a clear and present danger and the sum of all fears, which might be an unoriginal step too far. There's no cleverness toward without remorse, save for a few scenes where John relies upon his brute strength and his always surprising ingenuity. Everything is exactly as you see it. There's no deeper meaning behind anything, and there's no audience involvement with any character except for John. He is where our focus lies for this film's duration. No matter how much Sheridan, Staples, and Solomon want to try to make you care about the ancillary characters, the prefunctor getting to know the team moments only serve to mine some sort of ill-begotten drama and to try to make the stakes bigger, but these bits fell resoundingly flat. Even Curran is given the barest minimum of development as a strong SEAL team leader Germain, only to John being included in the film's climactic mission. Secretary of Defense Thomas Clay's Guy Pearce only purpose seems to be passing approving or disdainful looks at how Ritter's handling this burgeoning situation between the US and Russia. And it's a wonder he's even been given that much to do. All we're left with is Michael B. Jordan anchoring this film with his solid performance and astounding physique. He gives John a single-minded drive and fury, which we see manifest itself in his threatening persona and the various fight scenes, whether hand-to-hand or weapons-oriented. The action is definitely note for the unwatchable. But aside from John and Karen, there's no giving a damn about the other expendable channel. Try as the writers and director might. No, our singular focus is John Kelly and his mission to avenge his wife, going all the way up the chain for the person ultimately responsible for his wife's death. Even that much is a slight theft from Rian Johnson's A Brick, where a high school gumshoe sets out to find who put his dead girlfriend in front of a bullet, not the person who shot her, which in turn could be said about any generic revenge story, including a Gleaming the Cube ad. The film's major crime is not that it's unoriginal, it's that it doesn't know how to incorporate these influences into a cohesive whole, nor does it make us care about anything that happens to anyone. Much like IA Without Remorse's hero, it's functional, hard-hitting, and gets the job done, but at the expense of not being invested in those around him in a community of tough ass they come home breast. The Navy SEALs say he's the toughest of the bunch. Needs someone surgically taken out, choked into submission, quietly blown up. John Zerg, why? He proved it yet again during a mission in Aleppo, Syria, extracting a high-value hostage with his team as CIA operative Robert Willer supervised the fact that they were fighting some Russian soldiers. Well, sure, that seemed to surprise every teen. In any boot, and given the historic tensions between Russia and the US, the operation may shake up the decision-makers in Washington, D.C. a bit. But a few Russians certainly weren't going to keep John and his team from getting their bloody jobs done. Maybe they did their job set to a well. 3 months later, John's old team is almost obliterated. One teammate gets run over by a van while taking out the trash. Another is gunned down while stuck in traffic. And John, 4 well-trained gunmen invaded his house, killing John's wife and unborn daughter. John nearly died himself, but not before 3 of the 4 assassins also lost their lives. All 3 had ties to Russia. Ritter and his higher-ups in the CIA want to close the case. Sad stuff about John's wife and daughter and all, but no need to inflame an already tense international environment. Russia assassinating government employees on American soil. Why? That's reason to start a war, and no one wants of that. But John lost everything in that attack. The government wants to forget his wife, his daughter, his future. He wants just one thing now. John wants to make someone pay for what they took from him and pay for it in blood. He needs to know who that 4th gunman was and track his trail as far as he needs to in order to avenge his wife. He doesn't care how many cages he'll need to rattle, how many favors he'll need to call in, how many people he'll need to kill. Revenge is all that matters. You don't want to get on John Kelly's bad side. And if a holy ant say on his bad side, well, time for the Kremlin to lock its doors. Positive elements. John's one of the nicer killers you'll ever meet. He's willing to die for his teammates, and he proves that again and again here. But when he's not on a mission, the SEAL is a loving husband, and he can't wait to be a father. He's willing to make sacrifices for his family. 2. He's thinking of switching his high-risk government job for a gig in private security. Good hours, good pay, he tells a friend. When his wife and daughter are killed, he understandably loses it a bit. His commander and friend, Karen Greer, does her best to help him. At first, she feeds him information about the 3 Russian-linked assassins who died in his May. How is he skirting the law, but helping a friend? But when a team is built to track down this 4th, Karen does something unexpected, but probably pretty smart. She suggests to her superiors that John sit the mission out, worried that he'll kill the guy they're supposed to capture. That's the overarching goal, of course, to bring a killer to justice and find out what's really going on, to uncover the truth behind it all, no matter how messy that truth might be. And while we can and will certainly take issue with the definition of justice given here and the mode in which it's pursued, you've got to admire the dedication that most everyone here has for uncovering that truth. Spiritual elements. John seems to have visions of his dead wife. In one such vision, she's ripped away from him, but in another, she simply talks with him and tells them that there's a heaven. Is this it? John asks. No, baby, it's not. She says at a funeral, someone reads from the Bible and quotes some versions of Matthew 6:13. For yours is the power and the glory forever and ever. Ever sexual romantic content after coming home from a party. John kisses and cuddles with his pregnant wife and hopes to do more. He promises to be quick, but his wife Pam brushes him off at telling him that she needs her sleep for a big day at work the next day. He winds up on the couch listening to music. We see John shirtless a couple of the times. Violent content, we see perhaps dozens of people killed during the film, but the most stirring deaths are those that take place on American soil. One man is hit and run over by a van. The body tumbles underneath the wheels, and the van speeds away. Another is shot several times through a car windshield. We see the bullet holes and a bit of blood. Someone is apparently emulated in a car, while another man drowns in one. In the latter case, we see the victim actually expire. Killers silently shoot Jay's pregnant wife. We hear John tell someone that she drowned in her own blood. Other people die in combat. Most are shot to death, but others are victims of explosions, including one by a suicide vest. A man is strangled to death. Another is stabbed. Someone vanishes underneath water. Close calls and non-fatal injuries are pretty common here too. As mentioned in the intro, John is shot several times. We see those bandaged wounds and watch as he recovers in the hospital. He goes through what looks like a painful rehabilitation process. He and others nearly drown on a crashed and sinking plane. John shoots a man in the leg and the chest as a way to extract information, telling his victim that his lung has been punctured. Someone fights with prison guards dressed in riot gear, overcoming several of them and holding one hostage. Close the door or I'm going to start snapping necks, the prisoner says. Lots of threats and hostile words are exchanged. Vehicles purposely smashed into other vehicles. Gasoline is poured over a car and lit on fire, trapping the people inside. Russian police officers are killed by assailants, and someone blows up a couple of police cars. 2 crude or profane language 10s words in a peppering of other profanities, including a comedian, and had dot. God's name is misused twice, once with Dan. Jesus' name is also abused twice. Drug alcohol. Content at a party. John asks his pregnant wife whether she'd like a water. I want some wine. She jokes before asking him to get her some iced tea. Karen pours some whiskey in John's coffee cup and tells him to drink. That's an order, she adds when he hesitates. John pours alcohol all over his head while pretending to be very, very drunk. Other note for the elements, John also puts his clothes in a bathtub and urinates them, again, as part of a way. Drunken disguise. Some people hide important secrets. John and others disobey orders. Conclusion. This isn't a revenge mission. Lieutenant Commander Karen Greer tells John as they head off to confront the man who killed John's wife and unborn baby. This is Anna Extraction. We are going to bring him to justice. I'm done making promises. I can't keep, John says. And therein lies the overarching issue with the Tom Clancy. So, Without Remorse, based on the Clancy novel of the same name, and the first in a 2-part movie series featuring Michael B. Jordan as John Kelly. This film hooks into themes of a dangerous man grievously wronged and looking for some terminal retribution. And while the movie turns out to be more complicated than a pure revenge thriller, that thread runs mercilessly throughout. While Clancy's thrillers have always been pretty serrated, which is a bit unusual for films based on Tom Clancy books. The problematic content here isn't extreme for a narrated movie, but it certainly depicts a whole lot of bodies and includes quite a few swords. For adults who dig Clancy's books and the movies based on them, they'll likely find some stuff to like here. For families looking for good viewing options this weekend, they'll have to look for good stuff elsewhere. We have all seen the action movie where the soldier decides that the higher-ups have it all wrong and goes off on his own. We have all seen the action movie where the hero is unjustly sent to prison. We have all seen the one where the good guy repeatedly sacrifices himself to save his comrades. We have all seen the one where the CIA lies to the military. We have all seen the one where the upper echelons of government hide the truth from the lower ones and the public at large. We have all seen the one where this time, it's personal. What we rarely get is the action movie that manages to tick off all of these boxes and so many more. What we rarely get is the action movie that manages to be ultra generic, that manages to establish its difference by being more like every single once. It is impressive, even if it's horribly disappointing. This is the situation of Tom Clancy's Without Remorse director Stefano Sollima's movie from Taylor Sheridan, Will Staple, screenplay, and based on novel of the same name starring Michael B. Jordan as Clancy's John Kelly. There are a few things that distinguish the movie premiering on Amazon this week, except for how relentlessly dull the proceedings are made. One wants to be able to stand up and say that yes, while Without Remorse is boring, at least it separates itself with some impressive and unique action sequences. This is not the case. From soldiers being pinned down by snipers, to home invasions, to people caught in sinking forms of transportation, there is nothing here with which people won't already be familiar. What becomes far worse is when the movie starts to repeat itself in its action moments, trapped within its own understanding of how such films play out. On the plus side, it all starts off well enough, with the scummy CIA agent Robert Ritter, Jamie Bell, lying to Kelly and the team led by Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith, about a mission in Syria. We know he's lying because he's a CIA agent and because things go bad very quickly. It might be difficult to actually make out what is taking place during this operation, but we all know that it exists to put the real story into motion. And that happens, then the movie sort of maybe take parts of that story back in ways that don't make sense. This is all in order to advance a plot that requires the involvement of the CIA director, Lucy Russell, and the Secretary of Defense, Guy Pearce, and has to be Wendy to match a Clancy novel. One surmises, but it doesn't work. Of course, anyone familiar with Clancy's books will know that the entire point of putting Without Remorse on film is in order to set up the next movie. Similarly, the entire point of naming a character Greer is so that the reference can be made to games Greer. And we can all wonder whether Wendell Pierce, who plays Rear in Amazon's Jack Ryan series, will put in a cameo Broken Bar, or maybe if Ryan himself, John Krasinski, will. After all, there's corporate synergy to be considered, and Ryan and Kelly do appear in some of the same books. I will not be telling you whether any cameos occur, nor whether the Rainbow Six team gets a plug along the way. That is all external to the specifics of this film, and certainly within the realm of spoiler territory. Additionally, I am far too concerned with trying to figure out exactly what Kelly is thinking during a prison scene. He purposefully floods his cell when he knows that there are guards coming for him, and then creates a standoff with the guards in order to a broken bar. Well, that's where I'm stumped. And the water, as far as I can see, doesn't factor in at all. It's just a thing that happens, so Michael B. Jordan can go bare-chested. Kelly's boy works because things are occurring outside of the prison, of which Kelly has absolutely no knowledge, and the timing on those things happened to be perfect to help him in this weird... This isn't the only example of such a logic in the work, but it's a prime one. Jordan, as seems always the case, brings an intensity to the role. If anyone is going to be capable of saving the movie from itself, of lifting it out of the realm of action movie and into generic mediocre action movie, it is him. However, the weight pressing the affair down is simply too large for even Jordan's broad shoulders. Maybe they do make a Rainbow Six movie. Maybe the introduction of Domingo Chavez will be better than the one we got for Kelly. But it's going to be tough to top the one we already got for Chavez and clear and present danger. Who knows what the future will bring? We can only deal with the present. And in the present, Tom Clancy's Without Remorse is a completely generic misfire. A movie that checks boxes out of obligation rather than inspiration. I just watched a compelling action thrill starring one of fat people's sexiest men alive. And let me tell you, it was 2 hours. The very well spent the film that I'm referring to, a Tom Clancy's Without Remorse on Amazon Prime, where Michael B. Jordan stars as a skilled U.S. Navy SEAL named John Clark, based on Tom Clancy's novel of the same name. The film chronicles the origin story of John, who happens to be a recurring character in Clancy's fictional Ryanverse. Throughout the film, we follow the Navy SEAL as he seeks to avenge the death of his pregnant wife. Although I'm not familiar with Clancy's books or any of the Jack Ryan films, I had really high expectations for this movie, mainly due to Amazon Prime scripting a Jack Ryan series adaptation. I figured there would be no shortage of flying bullets, car explosions, or hand-to-hand combat, and thankfully, I wasn't wrong. Just a few seconds into the film's opening scene, I was wide-eyed and hungry for more action. John and his team are stealth-like ninjas as they work together to rescue a CIA operative held hostage in Syria. And just 3 months later, someone begins to target everyone who participated in the mission, leading to the death of John's wife, played by Lauren London, and their unborn child. Naturally, what ensues are a string of deadly confrontations, fiery explosions, and the unraveling of a secret conspiracy. Still, as entertained as I was by those action sequences, I was even more captivated by Jordan's performance. Even while he's fuming and hell-bent on revenge, the 34-year-old actor is quite charismatic. I loved seeing his character display such bravery with the team, but I was especially moved by John's emotional reaction to his wife's death, the unbridled rage in his screams when he revisits the crime scene, the pain in his voice when he insists that it was all his fa. All of it felt so intense and so raw. As for the plot itself, it did feel a tad formulaic. From the beginning, I had a nagging suspicion that turned out to be true. So that big twist towards the end didn't really have the desired effect. However, I did enjoy the few moments of suspense and the chemistry between the main characters. Would I say it's worth the watch? Well, take it from someone who is clueless about the booksaw. Jordan will certainly keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. Granted, his novels weren't always full of epic character development, but damn, if he didn't know how to write an exciting techno-thriller. When Rainbow Six came out as a PC game, I checked the novel out from the library and loved it. I went ahead and checked out all of his other books from the library and tore through them. I lost myself in the right anverse and still remember thinking of the ending of Fadet of Honora in the Saint, aftermath of 9/11 among all his novels. My favorite one by far was Without Remorse. It's less of a techno-thriller and has a much more human story detailing the origins of John Clark Kelly and what drove him to become the legend he was in later novels. I never considered it before, but he was John Wick before John Wick was a reality. When news broke that Michael B. Jordan was cast to play Kelly in the adaptation Zofa Without Remorse C and the Rainbow Six, I was pretty ecstatic that A, they finally got the projects out of development hell, and B, Jordan was cast as he's a hell of an actor, well suited to play Kelly's menacing yet vulnerable personality, combined with Stefano Sollima at the director's helm. What could go wrong? A lot, apparently. Listen, I'm not naive. I understand that when translating books to film, some liberties have to be taken, and considering the novel was set during the Vietnam War, they had to modernize the plot. But the end result here is so different. I don't think it's even fair to call it the same name. I once saw Aroy described as tasting like water that once thought really hard about fruit. That is essentially the relationship Without Remorse has to the eponymous novel. Kelly Jordan is a Navy SEAL under the command of Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith, the niece of another well-known Ryanverse character, Jim Greer. Shortly after returning home from a mission, 2 of his team members are killed. Kelly is hospitalized, and Kelly's pregnant wife is also gunned down, prompting Kelly to seek revenge without a broken bar. Wait for right, a broken bar remorse as a general outline that a kind of fad describes the overall plot to the novel. That is, however, where the similarities end. Once Kelly is released from the hospital, he essentially goes on a John Wick Sterling Archer, terms of an rampagement killing spree. And in that moment, the film becomes just another standard action flick that requires a ton of badass-looking shots and death-dying shootouts. It's missing much of what made the character in the novel more human. His attempts to cope with his wife's death, him performing his duty to his country while maintaining a separate personal mission, and so on. Sure, there are cool stunts and a few fun moments, but it's nothing you couldn't see in any modern shooter. The ending does have a faint reference to the novel, but that's about. It's hard to really appraise the acting in it because the cast wasn't given much to work with. Jordan does what he can, and he's certainly going to be eye candy for the audience, but he's not given much emotional material beyond revenge machine gore. The only real film of its name and presented it just as an action film on its own, it would probably merit a C, maybe even a C+. But the fact that the title is attached to it will inevitably draw comparisons to the source novel, and that's where expectations fail to be met. I get that characters have to be condensed or omitted at times, but the story and entire tone are so different. Calling it Without Remorse is like calling a car bicycle because they both have a frame and wheels. A Rainbow Six is a more forgiving prospect as the source material is essentially all technoporn. But they had a real opportunity here to tell a fantastic revenge story and completely whiffed. The work of novelist Tom Clancy has been the basis for a number of Hollywood adaptations from critically acclaimed box office fare, like The Hunt for Red October, and patriotic games to small screen offerings like Forcia and Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, while the latter's titular CIA agent remains the author's most famous creation. Arguably, just as important to the Clancy canon is former Navy SEAL John Clark, a major character first introduced in 1993, Without Remorse. And it's this novel that serves as the inspiration for the latest reimagining of Clancy's work. I use the word reimagining because the film, which reunites screenwriter Taylor Sheridan with the Sicario Day of the Soldawa director Stefano Sollima, is less an adaptation and more a complete overhaul of the settings, characters, and conflicts presented in the source material. While Both the novel and the film center on a lethal operative seeking revenge for the murder of a loved one. The similarities basically stop there. Recently returned from a covert rescue mission in Elpo, Senior Chief John Kelly, Michael B. Jordan, and his team are targeted for retribution. And although Kelly manages to stave off a home invasion by a squadron of highly trained assassins, his pregnant wife, Pam Lauren London, is one of the casualties. While the intelligence community refuses to sanction any further retaliation at a bay, CIA considers the matter closed, advises Agent Twitter Jamie Bell, a secretary of Defense, Thomas Clay Guy Pearce, is willing to turn a blind eye to Kelly's personal vendetta as far as Clay is concerned. Kelly is doing the sort of things the government can't do itself. He's shaking trees that need shaking. So let's see what falls out. What falls out, unfortunately, is a shakily constructed plot involving alleged plans for a series of attacks on U.S. soil, a off-their-chord distraction mission, and a far-reaching conspiracy whose tendrils ensnare the highest levels of government. On the page, it sounds like everything you might expect from a Tom Clancy story, but virtually none of these ideas are fleshed out beyond their most basic surface-level details. Instead, they exist solely to move the story forward just far enough to justify another major action beat. Michael B. Jordan is a tremendously talented actor, but the film never truly tapes into his potential. He spends far more time punching, kicking, shooting, and stabbing his way through an endless supply of nameless, faceless enemies than doing anything to elicit a genuine emotional response from the audience. When the film slows down long enough to attempt anything resembling character development, the thread dialogue leaves the bulk of these moments feeling hollow and unearned. Although Jodie Turner-Smith, as Kelly's commanding officer, is excellent without remorse, he serves up a steady parade of explosions, shootouts, plane crashes, and more shootouts. But it eventually begins to feel monotonous, and the film's centerpiece attraction, a 20-minute sequence where Kelly's team infiltrates an apartment building in enemy territory only to become pinned down inside, borders on exhausting. As for the conspiracy at the center of its plot, most viewers will have pieced this together long before the film gets around to pulling back the curtain, causing the reveal to land with a resounding thud. Clancy's work is often revered for its more cerebral qualities, but those are conspicuously absent here. As someone who has spent the better part of the last decade in the book buzziness, first in a used bookshop and then as a librariana, I am well acquainted with Tom Clancy. I am also well acquainted with his audience, which is almost entirely composed of white Republican male bloomers. They're the trashy sort of man's man books that admittedly make for pretty damn fun movies. His Jack Ryan books were adapted into wildly popular series of films starring Alec Baldwin or Harrison Ford, The Hunt for Red October, Patriotic Games, and Clear and Present Danger. And based on how much my parents and the parents of pretty much everyone I know had those VHS tapes at their house, it's curious to wonder if his brand of conservative espionage thriller can be adapted to appeal to a younger audience. Enter Michael B. Jordan and Taylor Sheridan. Jordan is about as hot as you can get as a young actor, or both as a tremendous talent. And well, they shoehorn a scene into this movie where he takes his shirt off and gets to display his absolute jacketness, and his presence clicks off at least a few of the alarm bells that go off when you see the words Tom Clancy's A Broken Bar plus Eating a Book Move V video game title. Taylor Sheridan is also on a hell of a run as a screenwriter, earning raves for his tout and gritty scripts for Hell or High Water, Sicario, and Wind River. His co-screenwriting credit clicks off a few more of those aforementioned alarm bells. So why oh why is Tom Clancy's Without Remorse absolute hat garbage? The answer is in the movie's title. Hey, let's get this out of the way. I didn't expect this to be the Citizen Kane of espionage thrillers. I expected this to be a dumb and fun action movie in the vein of the recent Chris Hemsworth vehicle Extraction. Give me a charismatic lead, some kick-ass action scenes, and let me enjoy my life. The problem here is that Sheridan and his co-writer Will Staples have taken a book from 1993 and made a movie that feels like it is set in 1993. It's stilted, stuffy, and feels like a modern Call of Duty game, but with an even dumber story. I suppose that's what happens when one of your writers is an ascending talent and the other one's only credits are video games. Will Staples has banned such interactive classics as Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, and Need for Speed Rivals, and random episodes of bad TV shows. The script is absolutely embarrassing, and it provides the rotten foundation this much smoke-fuel House of Cards is built upon. A. Michael B. Jordan plays Navy SEAL John Kelly, whose pregnant wife is gunned down in their home by Russian nationals as revenge for Kelly and his crew annihilating a Russian arms depot in Syria in the film's plotting opening action sequence. From the get-go, this movie feels like chugging a bottle of those testosterone pills they advertise in the middle of the night on cable news networks. It's the sort of filmmaking that makes you wonder why they just didn't call it Tom Clancy's generic action film. Any hope that the involvement of Jordan and Sherian might give Clancy's brand of pulp some edges quickly erased. What's worse is that when reading the synopsis of Clancy's 1993 source material, I found out it doesn't even have the same plot. Some beats, sure, but it's a different story, which makes you wonder why, when they could have done anything else, the screenwriters went with an absolute nothing burger of a plot. The revenge narrative is so cliched. The dialogue is straight up embarrassing. I'll show him what a pawn can do to a king. A brutal line that gets a call back when it turns out that the guy he thought was a king wasn't a king. But get this, a pawn just like him, and the whole who is really behind this conspiracy. Gimmick feels copy and pasted from How to Write a Shitty Action Movie for Dummies. The second a certain someone enters the picture, you know he is the real bad guy. It's that kind of movie. It telegraphs this so hard that if you don't get it right away, you will the second you realize what kind of movie you are watching. It's insulting on every level. And it's miraculous that God knows how many people laid eyes on this script and said, this is fine. A while Tom Clancy's Without Remorse is irredeemably bad, and you shouldn't watch it, I do feel like it is necessary to put Jodie Turner-Smith, Queen Slim, on your radar if she wasn't there already. She plays Kelly's right-hand woman in a part that was obviously meant to be a dude. This movie is full of so much straight male energy that her presence feels downright baffling, because her presence is absolutely magnetic and feels totally out of sync with everything else in this movie. Turner-Smith was certainly cast to balance out the testosterone, and while her character is as one-dimensional as every other character, at least you come away with that. Can I please have that actor in all my movies from here on out feeling otherwise? The only other takeaway, other than resting assured that Michael B. Jordan will be fine, and it's okay for him to have some duds after such an incredible run, is that there is no need to live in the shadow of old white dudes like Tom Clancy. And there is no sense in adapting this garbage in the 21st century. Leave it in the 90s where it belongs. In Tom Clancy's excellent 1993 novel Without Remorse, a former Navy SEAL Vietnam veteran named John Kelly loses his pregnant wife in a car accident, befriends a former prostitute, helps her kick drugs, and finds her murdered by her ex-pimp who almost kills Kelly as well. Seeking revenge by murdering pimps and drug dealers, Kelly decimates a drug ring, goes on a mission to rescue 1,000 fights against political corruption and KGB moles. I found it to be one of Clancy's best books, one stocked full of labyrinthine plots and interesting characterizations. Director Stefano Sollima's adaptation, Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, takes almost everything from the novel, save for the revenge plot, and completely throws it out. What screenwriters Taylor Sheridan, one of our modern best, which should have assured this to be a much better film, and Will Staples do, is take the essence of Clancy's main character and place him in a straightforward revenge thriller with a militaro-political edge. But nobody, the character of Kelly, also known as John Clark, was previously played by William Dafoe in Philip Noyce's superior 1994 Tom Clancy adaptation, Clear and Present Danger, and Liev Schreiber and Phil Alden Robinson's horrible 2002 adaptation of Clancy's The Sum of All Fears. Michael B. Jordan, a fine actor, does well, but is not given enough to work with. He is all scarred soul revenge machine, and not enough time is allowed for the film to build him as a human being. We root for the character because the screenplay says we must, as his mission of revenge and justice for his dead wife and daughter is right up and just. There is not an abundance of plot. So a deep discussion of the film's inner workings cannot be done. After the murder of his wife, John Kelly goes on a quest for revenge that gets him thrown in gaol. After being released to help bring down an international villain, Kelly finds himself drowning in a much bigger conspiracy that will lead back to the murder of his wife. What transpires is a decent enough action film that exists to set up a new series of Clancy films starring Michael B. Jordan. Solomon Sabura 2015 did very well when he helmed a sequel that should not have been as good as it was. Sicario: Day of the Salt. As a filmmaker, he does good work here as well. Modern action films fall prey to the shaky cam style that is mistaken for visceral movie making, but reduces action scenes to confusing and interesting messes. The director has a handle on how to shoot action. The great cinematographer Philip Rousselot keeps his camera fluid, using tracking shots and wide angles to allow for the well-designed action moments to be experienced, and there are certainly a few. The issue with the action in this film, save for an expertly choreographed stairwell attack, is that it does not me. The scenes are lacking in the thrill they need in order to stay with us after we have moved on. Without Remorse is well cast for the most part. Guy Pearce in the supporting role of Secretary Clay Clancy. Fans will be familiar with this character. Jodie Turner-Smith, so memorable in Queen and Slim, does a lot with her underwritten role as Kelly's fellow soldier, who has supreme respect for both the man and his mission. Smith is an actress who should carve out an impressive career moving forward. Jamie Bell is the only one who comes up short as Commander Robert Reeder. The typically good actor seems a bit lost and fails to project authority and the moral ambiguity the character requires. The role needed a more seasoned actor. I just could not buy that Bell was a man who has seen and done things. The obligatory post-Reddit sequence sets up the sequel and upcoming series of films. If this comes to pass, I will hold out hope that perhaps any future films will dig a bit deeper and take hold of Clancy's intricate plot stylings, as is Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, is a solid pot, enough action thriller. If you have read the book, forget what you know, as the film is its own entity. If you want to see the book on screen, this is not the film for you. Far from perfect, and nowhere near great, some good action moments, a director who knows how to craft a film, and an overall aura of interest keep this film afloat. Jack Ryan, the sunny, naturatured Boy Scout of the CIA, has had so much screen time that he's been played by 5 actors. Now finally, his Tom Clancy counterpart, John Clark, how the real shadow recruit gets his own starring vehicle. After lurking on the fringes of Ryan's movies and TV show for the past 30 years, there's a reason why it's taken the character so long to step up. As the title of this film implies, he's a moody sob, dark, brutal, hard-edged, not averse to a spot of hatch manipulation if the situation calls for it. In Clancy's original novel, he even tortures a pimp to death using a diving simulation chamber. 2020 Without Remorse doesn't get that bleak, but to its credit, resists the urge to turn Clark into a wisecracking, softer hero. A Michael B. Jordan, proving beyond doubt that he can do the whole action movie thing, turns in a performance fueled by rage and grief following a grim home invasion sequence that leaves his life upended. You entirely buy him as a guy who can, in a flash, weaponize his clothes using a sink should it be necessary. Jordan is also very good at doing that cool thing involving holding a flashlight and a gun while crossing your... The story he's propelled through may be a pretty standard revenge yarn, playing the same keys as movies as old Osa Schwarzenegger's A Commando and a SEAL So Hard to Kill. But Jordan is a natural at this stuff. It would be a shame if he doesn't get to reprise the character. The film's next most valuable player is director Stefano Sollima, who adrenalized the otherwise Rotius Quail and is the force behind current Italian thriller series 000. He has a knack for crafting action set pieces that keep squeezing the characters trapped in them, like of ice chucking and inspired little twists. And there are 2 standouts here. The scene at Clark's, home and one set inside a commercial jet that's sinking into a pitch-black ocean somewhere off the coast of Russia. The latter in particular is Virtuoso, a ridiculously suspenseful, seemingly heavy on practical effects, inspired in its use of air pockets. On the big screen, it would have been a showstopper even on the small one. It's barn-tormingly entertaining. Worry Without Remorse, which transforms its source material entirely. Goodbye Baltimore sex workers and Vietnam heroin ring. Valters is the plot. Long before the end, you'll likely have guessed where it's all going. Nations involving a Jamie Bells Gorman from Aliens' greasy weasel agency Spook and higher-ups at the CIA go exactly where you expect them to. And with Jodie Turner-Smith's Karen Greer, the most key supporting character just as glum and tacit as Clark, a furial air lingers between action scenes that after a while makes the story start to sag. While Jordan nails the spirit of Clancy's character, the film really could have done with a bit more fun around the edges and a little less remorse. Plus, maybe one or two fewer chess analogies. Matt Damon's Jason Bourne changed the American action hero overnight in 2002. Gone were the wise-cracking beefcakes, replaced by a new breed of reluctant, emotionally tortured heroes victimized as much by their own state as by any foreign enemy. Hollywood has been trying in vain to replicate the formula of the Bourne movies ever since, with director Stefano Sollima, Without Remorse, the latest attempt to kickstart a franchise set in the murky world of international espionage and in name only adaptation of Fat Tom Clancy's 1993 novel. Without Remorse, he serves as an original story for the recurring Clancy character John Clark, known as John Kelly, when we're introduced to him as a Navy B SEAL on a secret mission in Syria. Played by a Michael B. Jordan, Kelly is a loyal soldier who finds himself disillusioned when his unit is kept in the dark regarding the detail hat their mission involves, facing Russian soldiers. Upon returning home to the States, the members of Kelly's Yun are picked off one by one in a series of hits in what feels like an homage to the opening of Facamondo. When a squad of assassins arrives at Kelly's home, they unwittingly kill his pregnant wife, before being taken out by Kelly, all except one hitman who escapes. Pulling in a favor from his unit leader, Karen Jod Turner-Smitha, in a strong audition for her own Clancy-verse spin-off, Kelly acquires some info about who might be behind his wife's murder and sets out for revenge. But I can't say I've ever been a fan of Tom Clancy. But with the triad of the director of Fossa Solomon, the star of Fakita Jordan, and the writer of Fahel or Hiawatha Taylor, Sheridan involved, I had high expectations for Without Remorse. Sadly, it seems like all three have had something of an off day here. Delivering a movie that plays like a tired attempt to create a Bourne rival, one whose heart isn't really in it. Based on his work on Italian gangster replica Subra and underappreciated Squario 2. You might expect Solomon's filmmaking to be as muscular as his leading man's torso, but his action set pieces here feel flat and are hampered by some confusing geography. I know his character is meant hollow due to his personal loss, but Jordan sleepwalks through his role here with Turner-Smith owning every scene they share. Sheridan and co-writer Will Stay Plus have constructed the most generic storyline imaginable. You won't need to be a keen-eyed sniper to spot the twist coming, as it's the same twist that crops up in all of these movies. Hitchcock famously beat himself up over his decision to have a child killed on screen in his 1936 thrill Sabotage. He reasoned that he should have made the audience fear for the safety of the boy. But once he blew him up in a bus explosion, it was difficult for the audience to engage with the rest of the movie because the worst possible outcome had already happened. By killing Kelly's pregnant wife at the start of Without Remorse, Solomon, Sheridan, and Staples have made the very same error. That's practically the worst thing that could have happened to our protagonist, and it's difficult to get invested in the ensuing drama because of it. Also, when you have a protagonist who doesn't care if he lives or dies once he gets revenge, it's difficult for the audience to care about his well-being. Rather than fearing for Kelly, we're left to passively observe as he uncovers an all-too-familiar conspiracy. Besides, Aren't we past this dated trope of fridging the hero's female partner to inspire his revenge? There's a moment during a set piece in which our heroes think they've evaded a sniper, only to discover there's a second gunman. We learn this not because we see the second sniper, but because a character literally yells out, "There's a second sniper." This is indicative of the clunky storytelling at play here, with a plot that unfolds in a manner that suggests the screenwriters are making this up on the fly, like a kid constantly changing the rules to ensure he remains in a game of tag. The twist is so obvious that you wonder why the movie didn't just show its hand straight off. This would have made for a more suspenseful experience, as we would have known exactly what Kelly was up against and when he was in real danger. Without Remorse, he could be confused for a TV pilot, not just in its origin story, but in its apparent lack of a budget. It takes place in a curiously depopulated world, with scenes that are all too obviously backlot bound. Its shoppy sequence takes place in a residential district of a Russian city. But where are the people? Didn't the budget stretch to extras, or at least some convincing background noise? Michael B. Jordan has found his place in Hollywood as a leading man, playing the son of Apollo Creed in Creed, as well as the villainous Eric Kilmer in Black Panther. He's quickly established himself as an action-heavy functionary who can simultaneously channel a ton of heart in any role he plays. So, when the announcement was made that Jordan would be the focus of the next Tom Clancy adaptation, it was a very welcome yet unsurprising next step. It was revealed last December that Jordan had traveled to South Carolina to visit the Fort Jackson Army base to do research for a role, which we now know was for his portrayal of John Clark. And that, Tom Clancy's Without Remorse. The film follows Clark, a Navy SEAL, on a revenge mission to find those who killed his pregnant wife, Lauren London, quickly uncovering plots that would plunge the United States and Russia into a 21st century all-out war. In 2021, we're still making the Soviets the bad guys. Following Jordan on his stealth mission to Syria are Lieutenant Commander Karen Greer, Jodie Turner-Smith, and highly unlikable CIA agent Robert Reuter, Jamie Bell. All are led by commands from Secretary of Defense Thomas Clay, Guy Pearce, who had the easiest payday of his entire career. John Clark is one of the most iconic characters from Tom Clancy's work. He's previously been portrayed by William Dafoe in Clear and Present Danger and by Liev Schreiber in The Sum of All Fears. He's always been known as a grittier version of Jack Ryan, not afraid to break protocol and take matters into his own hands. It's obvious that Jordan was completely invested in this character and committed to going all in on providing the most authentic story possible. Every line of his was spoken with sincerity, and his physicality was fully immersive. The stylistic approach felt very much in the vein of previous action films from the 90s. Not overly edited, stripped back with practical effects, all of which helped me buy into Jordan's performance and feel the realism was going after. Jordan is one of the very few actors who can take out an entire brigade and then, later that night, lay on the couch munching on pistachios and make it believable. He can play a brutish, tough guy just as easily as an intimate, down-to-earth husband. I could go on and on about the positive aspects of Jordan's performance and his commitment to the role, but sadly, there's a shortage of much else to praise. Despite Jordan's highly decorated and talented co-stars, there's not much to show from them. That's not entirely their fault, as they could only do the best with what they were given. It's almost as if the entire focus was placed on Jordan's character, and the others were afterthoughts. Without Remorse has been in development for quite some time, with a few different scripts. But Taylor Sheridan, Sicario, Hell or High Water, and Will Staples finally hopped aboard to complete rewrites. Even with the screenwriter of Sheridan's caliber, it's obvious that there was confusion on what would be the most coherent way to adapt the story to the screen. The movie presents plenty of engaging plot lines to explore, but fails to capitalize on them, resorting instead to every cliché the genre has to offer. Even the brilliant action sequences, from a plane crash over the water in which Clark has to dive to retrieve his team's gear to a long battle between the Navy and the Soviets, couldn't save the uneven narrative. What was this story's this purpose? Even its most interesting character motivation for Clark is quickly abandoned. After the gruesome sequence of a wounded Clark crawling to the bedside of his dead wife, in which he screams in pure agony, the story somehow transitions to this overdone plot where, in the midst of battle, all Clark and his team can dwell on is the potential that everyone on the inside is the true threat. There have been countless thrillers to come out over the 5 years dealing with this exact concept. Those in higher power, on the good side, being the puppeteers of the entire conflict. It's nothing new, and even Captain America the Winter Soldier did it better than Without Remorse. It also doesn't help that so much screen time is herring when he's really just in a bad mood most of the time, rather than being an actual bad guy. The entire character arc of Jamie Bell is to act as a static douchebag to then do a complete turnaround by the end to become this misunderstood empath. Guy Pearce is completely emotionless, never once making play a likable or even two-dimensional character, so his art feels unearned and ultimately meaningless. The film is also predictable, almost beat by beat. Jodie Turner-Smith was easily the most likable behind Jordan, yet her character wasn't anything special. As Greer also suffers from negligible levels of development, Without Remorse is filled with missed opportunities to invest its audience, causing even its best moments to feel empty and unfocused. It's unfortunate that this couldn't have been executed better, because there is plenty of good to be found in its foundation. There's a dedicated performance from Jordan, competent direction from Stefano Sollima, and enough entertaining action sequences to go around. If you head into it unconcerned with a well-put-together narrative, but more interested in a few explosive action sequences, you might have a decent time with it. You may also appreciate the obvious laying of groundwork for future sequels. Overall, Without Remorse provides an entertaining performance from Michael B. Jordan that packs a ton of heart. Let down by a story that lacks any soul, you're going to build a new character-driven action franchise. Narai Day and hang tight for a KOD sequence midway through the end credits to see how that would take shape. Then, you need a charismatic lead to lay the foundations. Do a Tom Clancy Without Remorse. He certainly has that teen Michael B. Jordan. He brings charged physicality and emotional intensity to John Clark in this origin story of a shadow figure from the Jack Ryan novels who graduated to protagonist with the author's 1993 bestseller. Stefano Sollimized to tactical military thriller departs plot-wise from the source material, but stays true to the core. Element of a driven grieving man in a ruthless world where soldiers are pawns. When a Paramount's theatrical release became another CO9 casualty, Amazon swooped into, now what's sure to be a high-profile streaming premiere, as well as an adjunct to Saw Jack Rayana series. Jordan is the first black actor to step into the military boots of the super soldier who goes on into the prom. Rainbow seeks a video game series and a shelf full of Klans novels to head an elite multinational counterterrorism unit, a role previously played by William Dafoe in A Clear and Present Danger, and Liev Schreiber in The Sum of All Fears. The film adaptation has been in development on and off since soon after the book was published, initially at the now-defunct Savoy Pictures. Keanu Reeves and Tom Hardy both were approached to play the lead at various stages, with Lawrence Fishburne and Gary Sinise also slated to co-star at one point. John Milius worked with Clancy on a version he intended to write and direct before the project later bounced to Paramount, with Christopher McQuarrie directing. Jordan's attachment was first announced as a two-picture package following a Without Remorse with a Rainbow Six. A Taylor Sheridan whose specialty field extends from the neo-western hell or high water, a Yellowstone into urban crime and combat, was brought in to rewrite the adaptation, reuniting with the Sicario, Day of the Soldawa director Solomon, who first made his name on the terrific Italian crime Sassi-Gomorrah. Will Staples, who wrote the blockbuster Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3A video game, subsequently joined as co-writer. The result is a solid entry in the Clancy screen canon, a gritty, briskly paced, laced with vigorously choreographed fight scenes, explosive weapons action, and twisty political intrigues that seems preant as it taps into the most strained period in DOS. Russia relations since the Cold War. It doesn't reinvent the genre, but nor does it try to fix what's not broken, which should work just fine for Clancy's legions of readers. The question in the unknown new frontier of post-pandemic franchises is what happens to the planned second installment, not to mention any possible future entries without the launch pad of a theatrical release. Given the robust groundwork here, it would be a shame not to see Jordan continue developing a character already furnished with multiple future story arcs. While Jack Ryan is the brains of Clancy's espionage thrillers, John Clark A, introduced here under his real name, John Kelly, is more like the Brawn working under Navy SEAL Lieutenant Commander Karen Greer. Jodie Turner-Smith. He's first seen as senior chief in a key mission in Elbow to extract the CIA agent taken hostage by Syrian forces. But the patchy brief from CIA official Robert Reuter Jamie Bell leaves them unprepared to tackle Russian ex-military in a safe house that turns out to be an arms depot. The surprise? Fireworks seed animosity between John and the seemingly shady Ritter, stateside. 3 months later, 2 members of Greer's Alpha Squad are killed with chilling dispatch in what appear to be retaliation hits. Just as John is preparing to quit the military, take a private security job, and welcome his first child, masked Russians descend on his Washington, D.C. home in a nerve-rattling night vision sequence. He sustains multiple bullet wounds while killing 2 out of 3 assassins, but not before his pregnant wife, Pam Lauren London, is murdered in their bed. Cue revenge. At Langley, Greer learns from Ritter and Secretary of Defense Thomas Clay Guy Pearce that the CIA is ready to consider the score settled and the case closed, suspending further investigation. With one Russian killer still on the loose, this doesn't sit well with John. He goes rogue, putting some impressive kamikaze moves as shades of Liam Neeson's grim determination in the Taken a Thriller's A on an untouchable Russian diplomat Marinids at Dalasso's airport to get the name of escaped assassin Viktor Rykov. Brett Galman, the plotting from there on out, often favors speed over the detailed clarity of Clancy's Bros, perhaps because it pretty much ditches the original story. The chess metaphors in particular feel underdeveloped. Still, there's plenty of knife-edge action to keep you glued. Nudged along by a suspenseful score from Icelandic multi-instrumentalist Ja, told the cub of cigar till the cubed, there's an arrow escaped by John from prison guards and cahoots with Russian mobsters, a hairy mission flight that gets shot down in Russian territorial waters, and a face-off with snipers that tears up almost an entire block in the, port city of Mormons. This raises questions about a possible setup that John goes ghost to uncover in another near-suicidal underwater sequence. Solomon's muscular direction at its best echoes the hard-edged efficiency of vintage Tony Scott, aided by Philip Rouslot's dynamic wireless screen camera work, often in tight spaces. The fight sequences never make the mistake of making the physical clashes look too slick and easy. The immersive action is more punishing than heroic. There's not much flesh on the bones of the story's secondary figures, but the cast gets the job done, as he has demonstrated in the Akiva movies. And some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.